everyone, welcome back to Grind and Shine. Today we're super happy to have Jonathan from Kyuukei Coffee. The first time I was in Kyuukei Coffee, it was just 2 weeks ago, and it was a very little cozy store, and once you walked in, you feel the vibrancy, and then you see like Jonathan talking to the customers, and it's a very warm place. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you Isabel, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so maybe you can let us know a bit more about yourself before we start.
So my name's Jonathan. I've been working with coffee for about 10 years. Started out with a little AeroPress setup at home. Ended up buying my first burr grinder. It was a conical. Then progressively as the years went by, got deeper into coffee. I think went around tasting a lot of different cafes, saw the rising of the new age cafes in Singapore, like Community, and then eventually got my own espresso setup in 2018, and then just been making espresso since then. As for the cafe, we've been around since October of last year, but we started actually as a coffee cart in April of 2023, where we did a coffee cart for my friend's wedding. Enjoyed that so much. Immediately started looking for a place to lease and just enjoying every day. Yeah.
That's amazing. Can you share with us, how did you first fall in love with coffee?
Yeah, so about a decade ago, my cousin opened a cafe called First Coffee Company in Brisbane. Before that, she had been in the competition circles, but also started her coffee journey with Merlot in Australia, which is one of the big chain, all the franchise brands that they have. And then that was my first exposure to specialty coffee, and then sort of seeing how meticulous she was about everything that she did. The fact that she wanted to be in relationship with the person that she bought milk from, to make sure that the cows had a good life, that they were treated well, and they made some delicious milk. They were Jersey cows, so like the fat percentage was close to between 4 and 7%. So every white drink that you had was rich, creamy, and luscious. And then just how much effort she put into making sure that the coffee tasted as good as it could, and that was just inspiring. I sort of like had that as a ranking, and having that as a 10, I then went around both Australia and Singapore trying to find something that was similar or that could top that, I suppose, with like nostalgia and that the impact of a first experience that stayed as a 10 for a long time. But I think Singapore has really picked up in terms of coffee quality and
Have you met any 10 in Singapore?
So I have to exclude all the geishas that I've drank, because that's just doping and cheating. I think nostalgia, like I said, nostalgia really plays a role. The best I've probably had is like a 9.5. Where it's just borderline, but I think not with that kind of emotion and sentiment that first experience has.
Yeah. How did you ever have the idea of starting Kyuukei? Like when you were looking for places, like how did it all happen?
So we got to go back to April, where I enjoyed that coffee cart. I think Kyuukei was sort of a byproduct of how I was feeling at that point in time, which was the opposite of Kyuukei. I was not feeling rested. I was frankly exhausted because I was still working in my corporate job, traveling about twice a month, and also working pretty hard. Like it was a West Coast biotech company, so calls would easily stretch up until 11, 12, midnight, sometimes 1, and then working a job that was a few pay grades above where I was. That all took a toll on me. So then sort of like Kyuukei was in a way an escape from that. And you guys probably can't see from the video, but the logo is my cat. And that was the view of him on my shelf next to my desk.
He's being surrounded by the logo there.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a way that's where my head was at, and I wanted this to be my escape from that, and in a way my rest and my break. And in a way, that's the sentiment we want to draw people in with too, to come here and rest from the hustle of life in Singapore or life in general, you know.
Yeah.
As for the location, I think I had sort of gone around quite a bit. The search started around Chinatown because that was fairly close-ish to the CBD, but not in the CBD. And I found a few locations that I had known well. Those didn't turn out because of the electrical requirements. And then I went through a whole phase of looking in the CBD because I knew that they would most likely hit the electrical requirements. But then I came across this one, and initially I had rejected it because I thought it was closer to a lot of other cafes that are in the area.
Yeah.
But once I realized and came and visited it, that it was on the other side of the estate, in a way I was like, okay, there's enough separation.
Yeah.
You won't be facing them all the time. And I think it was a very charming space, and the landlord was very generous to offer the garden for me to uproot and put my own plants. Yeah, so then in a way it created a sort of space where people can sit, enjoy their coffee, enjoy a little bit of greenery. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like other practicals would be that it's near fairly dense residential areas like the Stirling, Mei Ling, Queenstown, even Bukit Merah. And then I think also with the offices like IKEA or the car dealerships, Alexandra Retail Centre, that all played a part into its viability for me.
Yeah. I think this is a really good location. Last time I was here on a regular Tuesday afternoon, and you can see people living nearby because there's HDB, there are residential area, and there are people working nearby. They just come and grab coffees. They're students. And for those who are just listening to this is a space where around 6 to 8 people can be here comfortably with a fair amount of like a coffee bar place. So it's a very, very cozy place you have it here. You shared with me before that 6 months ago during the opening, it's also a very important day in your personal life. So can you run through with us what happened the day?
Yeah, so then going back again, I think the reason why I wanted to leave my job and start Kyuukei was I knew I was going to be a dad. Well, when I first decided to do the coffee cup for my friend's wedding, I didn't know that I was going to be a dad yet, but as things progressed on, I just felt that tension between being at home and having my family thrive, but my job in jeopardy, or traveling and my job would be fine, but family would be in jeopardy. So my son was born the day after the launch party of Kyuukei, and I think timing was impeccable, but at the same time exhausting. I had hoped that the cafe would be up and running, say, 2 or 3 months earlier, but I think with all the permits and regulations that took a little longer than we expected. So November 4th it was, my son was born. My wife went into labor the night after we closed. Got home 7 o'clock, ate a quick dinner, I don't even remember what it was, lay down, fell asleep. My wife beat my chest saying, "Hey, I think he's here." And I'm like, all right, let's go.
The timing is just right after the launch.
Yeah, so when people like find out that we've been around for 6 months, and then my son is also about 6 months old, they're like, "How'd you survive? How are you alive right now?" And really, it's through a lot of. Well, I'm just really fortunate and blessed to be in this position.
Yep. When I first came in, I thought there's a bit of like Japanese vibe here and there. I don't know if I'm correct, but then there's a lot of bamboo decor. Can you run through with us what is special about the shop or any stories behind?
Yeah, so I really enjoy the Zen minimalist kind of aesthetic. I think that was also the theme for my house, the Scandinavian kopitiam. But I think there are small callbacks to bits of my heritage. Like you see the rattan in the back. That's all my Peranakan heritage, along with the green tiles at the counter, which I'm sure we'll put a photo up of.
Yeah, and there's some stories behind the cups and the plates, right?
Yeah, so if you order a flat white or a long black, it comes in a 7-ounce cup. You'll get one of these cups, and on the back, you probably can't see it, but it says England 686. So this was made in June 1986. These come from my grandparents' restaurant in Brisbane. The whole reason why I ended up in Singapore is because their restaurant unfortunately went under 1989 or 1990, and my dad came to Singapore in 1991, and that's where I've grown up, where I've lived. And in a way, like, this is a continuation of a family business or family-run business. I found this in my grandparents' basement, and I was like, oh, how cool it would be if I could bring this back and serve coffee out of this.
That is super cool. I think because I'm a fan of all these, family stories, and the business like keep running through generations, and I think it's super special. Last time I got a chance to have a flat white made by Jonathan. It was like super creamy, and yeah, the cup has its history, so it's super special. Is this what you expected from the get-go, or what's the reality check here?
I think in terms of customer interactions, it's really been what I expected. Getting to know everybody that comes through the door is really a joy and something that I relish.
Yeah.
I think I foresaw that I would be moving away from the bar a little bit more as time went on.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what's necessary for us to be efficient, to continue innovating. I can't be behind the bar all the time, because then I wouldn't be able to build other arms of the business, like roasting. A lot of people have asked us about a coffee subscription, so that's probably in the works as well. Going out, tasting coffees, trying new stuff, getting inspiration, coming up with new menu items. I think that would all be affected had I stayed behind the bar.
Yeah.
I think, in a way, I think this also calls back to why I decided to open here. It's sort of a lower risk test bed for me to learn as much as I can, make a few mistakes that aren't fatal or aren't critical, and then that will build the experience for the next place.
Yeah.
To continue iterating and building something up without having gross amounts of money leaving the bank account every month.
Yeah.
So that's definitely. I think I've also learned like how much I enjoy working with staff and just sort of both developing and setting the culture from above. So really the people aspect of it is something that I've really relished.
And what is something that you never expected happen, or it came as a surprise to you?
Well, to be fair, this was also something that I talked about with a friend of mine who's a cafe owner in Perth. The unexpected costs that you have in the cafe are a bit of a shock. Sometimes you realize that a process or an item or a utensil is not suitable. I'll give you an example. I think at the beginning we were just serving our pastries. I hadn't thought to buy plates or anything like that for pastries. So then the purchase was for stainless steel trays that we now serve our items on. The next thing would have been this door. It's currently a door that swings in and out. It's bi-directional. But before it swung in and was a knob door. So you can imagine when we want to serve people drinks, we've got to put the cups down, open the door inwards, bring the drinks out, or if somebody was taking away an order with more than 2 cups, it was very cumbersome. So then things like that add up, and I suppose had you not set aside a bit of funds for that, or had that shock in a way, then you'd be hurting a little bit, or you'd have to, take unfavorable loans, that kind of thing.
Yes, because these costs add up, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
And you
yeah.
never thought you would spend on a door or spend on some utensils, but they actually turn up to be a sum of money.
Yeah, they
And
do add up too.
How about the beans, the coffee itself?
We started out not roasting, and I think I was in the philosophy that I wanted to change roasters and feature local roasters. But I think that was before I found the joys of roasting.
Yeah.
And then in a way, like sourcing my own coffee from working with green suppliers and cupping and tasting different coffees. So that also changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
From serving maybe 2 coffees from a local roaster, I went out carrying like 9 different coffees roasted by me. And that's all stuff that's gone through my palate a few times. I tell people that I can sort of curate the experience through that.
What is the one kind of coffee you're most proud of on your menu?
The Kenya. The wash Kenya that's on our bar, it's a Kiamwangi. I think so Onyx Coffee Lab in the US, which is where Lance Hedrick, basically the YouTube stars, they also serve the Kiamwangi. And I got the opportunity to taste both our coffees. And I'm biased, but I like ours more. So I'm just like, yes!
Can you describe how an omakase event is?
Yeah. So we run an omakase roughly once every 6 weeks. Is where we want to be at. And it's 2 coffees that we are serving on the bar, or it's a guest roaster that we've done a couple of times before. I go and taste the coffees, sort of figure out the notes that are present both in espresso and a white. That way I can decide on how we're serving that coffee for the course. Then after that, it's using my knowledge of culinary to then think of complementary flavors that work well together. Then it's talking to my baker and saying, hey, I would like to use this coffee and it features these notes. I'm thinking we can do a dessert that combines these ingredients together, and then after that it's what kind of ingredient or what kind of dessert are we going to serve. Then it's let's test a bunch of recipes, go through a few iterations, maybe a few tweaks here and there, and then once we've firmed that up, then it's on refinement.
Wow. How many courses do you have?
So we do 2 at the moment, and it's always been an espresso or a black course and a white course. People are free to then ask if they'd like oat milk or if they'd like a shot black instead of an espresso. So we'll top that single shot of espresso up to about 3 ounces.
For the coffees you're serving for omakase or on a regular day, where do you source the beans and how do you roast it?
So I work with green suppliers in Singapore. I'm not at the point where I can directly communicate with farms, mainly because that needs a physical interaction, and I haven't been around long enough to be at all these fairs to make that connection with them. I would love to in the future. Like, oh man, the thought of traveling to Panama or Ethiopia for coffee would be a joy. But I think it's mostly asking for green samples, like unroasted coffee samples from the suppliers. Sort of trying to sample roast them in a few profiles, seeing what they have to offer at each respective profile, and then once I've decided that I want that coffee, then I buy it. I sample roast again with different profiles, and then sort of narrow in on how I want to roast it. I think then I try and set a profile, compare it to the test production roast that I decided on, and seeing how they compare, and then the next batch I can reiterate and then just keep improving. But once we've come very close, if not identical, to the sample production where we want to be, then the benefit of roasting on Stronghold roasters, which is the one that I use, is that it follows the profile pretty closely. It's almost like push button and it's done. But then it's also sometimes like validation of roast to roast, you know.
And you roast your beans once a week?
thereabouts. I think we with the volumes that we have, it's about 3 to 4 batches a week of coffee, and that's maybe 20 to 30 kilos of coffee a week.
Yeah. Okay. I see that on your menu there are a fair amount of items of like specialty coffee. How do you create the menu?
We've tasted everything in both espresso and filter, which is crazy to think because I've like pulled a Panama Geisha in espresso. A lot of people are like, have you done that? And I'm like, yeah, I have. It's great, but I can't serve it as espresso. But then like sort of seeing whether it's better as a filter or better as espresso. I think most of our beans are omni, but there are some that are very delicate that I wouldn't really want to run in espresso, and it's better enjoyed as a filter.
Yeah.
For example, like our Ethiopia or our carbonic maceration Nicaraguan. But the others are available in espresso. Although we'll try and steer people away from what we know doesn't taste that good.
Yeah.
So an example would be a lot of people want the Kenya in a milk drink, and I'm like, I wouldn't hold your horses.
I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, because I think the Kenya has a lot of special acidity that's very citrusy, and a little bit of like blackcurrants and a bit of oolong, but milk is sort of an acidity killer as well as a bitter killer.
Yeah.
So then you lose everything that makes that Kenya unique and special.
Yes.
So we try and steer them away from milk drink.
And I can see that Jonathan is really a people person, as in last time we were having lunch in the hawker center near Kyuukei, it's just right behind the corner, and he was queuing for the chicken rice, and then there are some other people working nearby, and then he was just starting to talk to them, and then they were like, oh yeah, you're the Kyuukei owner, yeah, we'll come by later. And then it became a really casual conversation, and the human touch is there, and like everyone sort of knows everyone, and they would really come by and have the coffee, and Jonathan never like scares to talk to people and make them feel welcoming. And as you were saying that you try to bring in the little Jonathan and your staff, how are you training them to provide that kind of hospitality?
I really think it's just been through example. So at the beginning, I was in the shop nearly every day to work alongside them.
Yeah.
To both teach them what I know and sort of give them an example to follow. That I would go out, talk to people, and the way that I engage with them and try to educate people with coffee is something that they've really taken and made their own, which I'm really happy about. Yeah.
Do you remember any piece of feedback from a customer, good or bad, about Kyuukei?
Someone just yesterday told me that we're probably like top 5 coffees on
Wow.
his list. I know. I was like, wow, thanks.
Which are the other 4? Just kidding. Yeah. Top 5, that's really good.
Yeah, I know.
How do you feel when you receive, this compliment?
I feel honored. I think being a small business owner, sometimes it can feel like you're working really, really hard with little reward, if that makes sense, for a while at least. But I think moments like those, or like moments where you connect with somebody very well, and they leave with a smile, that's rewarding. I mean, it gives you joy in what you're doing.
Yeah. Any kind of feedback that you're surprised or?
Yeah. So I mean, this actually just happened yesterday. I think.
So you've been through a roller coaster.
I suppose.
Yeah.
No, I mean there was just a review that, in a way, was out of our control. Everything that was criticized were things that were completely out of our control.
Yeah.
Like complained about the weather, that it's really hot, and they ordered a hot drink.
Oh no.
And that they ordered a latte instead of a flat white, or rather, they ordered a latte, which is the biggest drink that we have at our menu, and that it was too much milk. So in a way, at every step there are things that are completely out of our control, like it's
the
been
weather.
sweltering in Singapore. You're very welcome to sit inside if there is space. If it is unfortunately a bit too busy on the inside, then perhaps sitting outside under the fan is your only option.
Yeah.
But just talking to us and not making an assumption on what you want
Yeah.
will help you have a better experience. I think, some people might be reluctant to ask questions, mainly because they don't want to come off as being like a noob or someone that doesn't know their coffee. Yeah, so things like that I think make me feel a bit frustrated that we weren't given the opportunity to do our job,
Yeah. Like customer coming in, not saying a thing, but then go home leaving a bad review.
Yeah.
That is a bit disappointing and frustrating as well for the owner. Yeah.
I think I also would like the viewer or the listener to understand how impactful Google reviews are, because it's a grade point system.
Yeah.
It's one poor review could, especially at the beginning, can leave a business completely dead.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, I don't usually go to anything that's below 4.2 stars because I know how the grade point system works.
Yeah. Control.
Perhaps the takeaway, not so much the impact of Google reviews, but simply speaking up and asking questions is not going to come off as offensive or we're very happy to answer questions.
Yeah.
By asking a question, it gives you the best chance at having a great experience.
Yeah. Tough moments, it makes us treasure the people around us who are still super supportive,
for sure.
the customers.
Yeah.
And last but not least, what is the plan for the rest of the year?
Ooh. I'm probably gonna launch a coffee subscription service, so that will be in denominations of 200 grams, 400 grams, and a kilo. That will be mailed directly to you every month. And then I've put in an offer for a second space.
Wow, I was waiting for this.
Yeah, so we'll see how that one turns out. I think it's conjecture until you have pen to paper on the tenancy agreement. So we'll see how that one turns out.
Wow.
No, I think I'm just generally excited for you and the podcast, and
Oh, thank you.
and look forward to seeing how this grows too.
Yeah.
And just really excited that you've joined the coffee community
Oh.
with us.
Yeah, I'm so excited too. I can't. Next time you can interview me. You
Sure.
can set
Yeah,
up a
sounds
call.
good.
Just kidding. And okay, before we end, we actually have a game.
Okay.
Are you ready for the
Yeah,
game?
yeah.
It's called Quick Shots.
Yep.
So I'm gonna ask you a question and you have to answer within 10 seconds. Okay, ready? If Kyuukei has a theme song, what would it be?
Oh!
You can sing it.
Born and raised, John Mayer.
What is the most unusual piece of decor or furniture you have in Kyuukei?
Unusual.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, we've got a cat and a plant that usually
That's so
migrates
cute.
around. Other than that, the flowers, like a garland that my sisters gave me that are crocheted. You'll find it at the corner of our shop.
Yeah.
I suppose that's another unique
Nice.
decoration that's in the shop.
Most signature beverage at Kyuukei.
It used to be flat whites, just because I think everybody's been traveling to Australia or New Zealand and brought that back with them.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been seeing an uptick in cortados, which I'm a big fan of. At Kyuukei, we decided that every drink is going to be 2 shots, except for the piccolo, which is traditionally a single shot. I think why I did that is I got a bit sick of cafes serving single shot 5 ounce or single shot 7 ounce in some places.
Yeah.
I think people are smart enough to figure out how much milk they'd like and just decide on a different strength drink later on.
Sure. And last but not least, 3 words to describe Kyuukei.
Cat, rest, hospitality.
Nice. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming in today. Actually, I'm in your shop, so thank you for coming to the podcast. Please follow us on Spotify, Grind and Shine, and Instagram, Grind and Shine Podcast. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Isabel.
Follow Kyuukei on Instagram. Here.
See you guys.
Bye.